Quick commercial break. First up, GraphX Source. If you need a solution to improve efficiency and reduce costs in your art department, GraphX, it offers industry-leading outsourcing options for your shop. They plug and play into Printavo or any other shop management solutions. And, they handle a lot of your back office work, SEPs, digitizing, creative art, order management, all that good stuff. They've got over 30 years in the game. Hit them up, Printavo Pod 24. That code will get you 50% off your first vector, SEP, or embroidery order.
We used the crap out of GraphX over the weekend. We got overloaded with SEPs and proofs and mockups, and I had to call in extra help. And so GraphX was able to put a team really quickly on us to get us all ready for the weekend to do a bunch of hot market printing. They were doing SEPs literally live while we were printing. It was awesome. So hit them up. Thanks so much, Nick Wood.
All right. Our guest today started cleaning screens actually back in high school. Not sure if he was using EasyWay, but if you're not, you shouldn't be spending hours cleaning screens, as that is a thing of the past. EasyWay screen printing and cleaning supplies have innovative formulas that are designed to work quickly and effectively. So you could spend less time cleaning and more time creating. EasyWay is passionate, and not only that, they've empowered a lot of printers of all skill levels and all shop sizes. And lastly, they've got a lot of really great resources and a great team to be able to help you. So they're a really great partner in your shop. Thanks, EasyWay.
Multicraft, if you go to your phone and type in multicraft_daddy, he's at 983 followers. We got to get him over 1,000. He will post some more terrible dad content if you can do that for him. But if you need ink supplies or a daddy, Multicraft screen printing and digital supplies for over 50 years has been providing you with top brands at competitive prices. You can mention the Printavo pod and receive an extra 10% off your order, or you can actually shoot Dave a DM, and he's giving away a free case of PMI tape per episode. To win, DM and follow Dave, subscribe to the podcast, and if you follow PMI tape as well, leave him a nice comment on this video. Dave's going to pick out a new customer to win each week. Thanks so much.
Supercolor. Speaking of Supercolor, was peeling some transfers for my wife this morning. Supercolor is the world's best heat transfer, made for screen printers by screen printers. They understand the pressures and expectations of running a screen printing business. They both have screen printing businesses on the side, so they're able to use their product and be able to keep iterating on it, which is really cool. But Supercolor helps you make it. That's why if you use the Printavo15 code, that will get you 15% off as a promo code. Supercolor.com. They've got Super DTF now, so now their minimum quantities are down to 1. All right, let's jump on into the episode.
Do you work at home part of the week?
Not very often. Maybe once a week, every here and there. But for the most part, I like to go in, and it a little bit better setup at work for me as far as that goes.
Why, you have a door that closes?
Yeah, exactly.
How often? Okay, when you go into, what time do you get into work every day? What time do you guys get in the shop?
So production starts at 6. I usually come in at 8. So, but we have a second shift, so I'll kind of be there to like help transition if like there's any questions or anything like that. But so I'll usually stay till about like 5 or 6.
When you go into work every day, do you have all your stuff you're going to accomplish? And then like, how often do you just get pulled on the production floor?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I mean, I kind of like use like my inbox as like my task list, right? So like, I kind of use like the unreads as like, okay, I need to do these things. But, as far as production, it just depends. We actually had to let our GM go on Tuesday. So now it's going to be like a little bit more. But before that, like, I mean, last year I really wasn't involved in production very much at all.
Was that second in line? Like that was right under you?
That was right under Shane. Yeah. So, cause like for the most part, I mostly just handle like sales, customer service, marketing. And Shane's kind of domain is the production.
Got it.
So he mostly reported to Shane. Yeah.
Why didn't it work out?
I think there was just like differences of opinion on like where like the company should be going. And, you know, like I'd say like I had a main leadership role, like, you know, we need to be all kind of like cohesive in that sense. And I think he had some ideas of like things that customers and things that we were doing that didn't quite fit, and realistically they did, So we just kind of decided just to move on a little bit. And Shane and I think we just needed to get right now, like, I think there's just some things that we need to tighten up and that we know we could tighten up. And it's just like, let's just get that done. We're hiring a production manager on screen print on Monday. So I think there's just like a lot of like day-to-day stuff that just needs to get done that I kind of think was falling to the general manager that probably shouldn't have. But at the same time, we didn't say you can't hire that person either,
That does happen with leaders, especially when you get to a size that the manager has a lot of operational stuff to do. And you're like, wait, I need you to kind of see a little bit further or dive into data on stuff or, but they get bogged down on one-on-ones and, hey, can I use a coupon code or discount for this? Like, there's just like these tiny questions like constantly.
Agreed. Yeah. No, and that was like our thing. It was like, dude, you need to be able to see the forest from the trees, and like you're kind of like really stuck in like the things that you have people to delegate this to, and you're just not,
So wait, tell me if you don't want to go into it, which is fine. You said that you guys didn't necessarily align and like he had certain ideas, you had certain ideas. Do you have an example of one of those where, a bit of a sore thumb that didn't align that kind of split you guys apart?
Yeah. I mean, we, for the most part, we don't do too much like retail, right? Like we're mostly, B2B, like corporate stuff. However, we have one good customer that does like a really big, they do a really big retail job every quarter. Right. But with that involves, sampling, things like that. Like we have to get the samples right. We have to get these colors right because it's a licensed image. And so it is kind of a pain in the butt. Like if you're not used to sampling, like if you're a shop that is always sampling, it's just like, okay, that's just another day. We have a press that's devoted to sampling. Whereas we're kind of taking away some press time to do sampling. But the end result is like a lot of shirts, like a ton, so it's like, okay, we could do this, we might lose, 6-7 production hours over like a couple weeks, but the end result is going to be like, weeks of work, for a couple presses. So he didn't think that was a good idea. So
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So yeah.
All right, I get the misalignment now.
Yeah. So
okay, I just found that interesting. So that's why I was diving in a bit. Not the reason, obviously, why we brought you on, and more of a unfortunate aspect, always parting ways. Even if it's not a good hire or like it's not a fit, it still sucks.
It totally, it's the worst part of all of our jobs. I think it's just it's you want everybody to work out the best, but it's like, at a certain point, we got to do what's best for the business, but it doesn't make that idea any easier,
So Kevin, I wanted to bring you on. We just spent the weekend together at ThreadX, which we're going to dive into and talk about. But for those that don't know, Stoked on Printing, and I think Merch Loop is kind of the tech side of your shop. Stoked on's been around for a minute, and it's probably one of the most tech forward shops I've seen personally in the industry, meaning you guys do, on-demand DTG, on-demand embroidery. You have your own Shopify app as well. You're fulfilling for some of like the biggest names. You're in Vegas. You're running multiple shifts. You've got multiple locations. You're dabbling in 3PL. You guys do it all. And it looks pretty good from the outside looking in. And I think Bruce and I toured, maybe, I don't know, we were in like Vegas for some conference, maybe Printing United several years ago. And I thought you were way older than me. And then I realized we were the same age.
Really?
And then I was like, wait, holy shit, they do a lot of business. So I don't know. I think you and Shane and the way you guys run your business is super, super fascinating. But just wanted to, I was like talking with Bruce. I was like, dude, we need to talk to Kevin. He's just got a wealth of knowledge and stuff that he's done.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Where do you want? Should we start ThreadX? The one that Bruce missed? Funny story. Let's talk ThreadX. Bruce, why weren't you at ThreadX? Can you just...
Well, I booked a trip for my wife for her birthday. So we went to Mexico City, which, if you haven't been there, just amazing spot. Like amazing food, really nice people. And so on.
I accidentally spoiled the surprise.
Yeah, so I told Steven I was planning this. And so I was sitting with my wife like at Long Beach, I think. And he was like, all right, so I've got a plan for you guys on how to get to ThreadX with us. Because I know you're going to Mexico City, but instead of that, and like we're all just like looking at Steven like but it was all good.
I goofed.
It was all good. But that's funny. No, it looked amazing. So ThreadX, I've seen some of the pictures. It looked really cool. It looked, I mean, to be blunt, like a higher end event. You know, it was like probably the more higher end event than our industry has had, which is really cool. I mean, I think the cost, I don't remember, like $4,000 or so, all inclusive for a couple nights, couple days.
Yeah, it was. I think like the lowest one was like 2,500, and then it went up from there. Like every couple $100 was an increment, but then on top, then it was like I think 1,500 for an additional person.
Kevin, when you first saw it, Brett had told me about like, hey, I'm working on something. It's going to be much different, a little more elevated. We're going to headline a crazy speaker. What was your initial thought when you saw it? I'm just curious.
I mean, like getting the email, like if you got like the thing in the mail, like it was just such a nicely curated invitation. And like, I think the idea of like the invite system, like I think inherently makes you feel like a little bit more special, like, oh, okay, cool. I got invited to this, but the price tag was definitely like a shocker. It was just because I don't think I think that had to have been like the most expensive event ever put on in our industry. I could be wrong. There might be some private things that are happening, but from like, a conference style thing, like that's probably at least like 4 times the usual amount that you're kind of expecting to pay, given that lodging was included though. So that's like, I think another thing like you had to kind of put in perspective was it came with a room,
a really nice one.
A really, really nice one. Yeah. Like incredible amenities. And it was like, okay, I could see this, as I got there, I was like, this totally makes so much sense. Like if anything, like that was a pretty good deal in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it kind of filtered out. It definitely filtered out. It was for a different audience for sure. And you definitely have to go with a lot of intention there. But I think that's what made for such a cool event. I think Bruce and I are part of this exec group, and some of the retreats are $4,000 or $5,000. But it's like if you're going for a reason, which I thought was really interesting. So it was at Sundance in Salt Lake City at Robert Redford's like resort, which was super cool. We got there. There's like rivers flowing through there. There's like a ski lift right there. Kind of felt like we were in like a little bit of a little winter wonderland, if you will.
Yes, snowing. So, like,
yeah,
but like a nice snow. Like, I don't know if that makes sense,
snow.
But yeah.
So that was super cool. And then the first night we got there, it was really just like a get to know you. So like we all sat with different people at dinner, which was cool. And I sat with some of the guys at Alpha Broder. I sat with the team at OmniPrint. And there was a magician and music and just like a good time for the evening, which I thought was kind of cool. It was just different. It was like, welcome to camp.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like. What was your, let's dig into it. So like on Saturday, what stuck out to you, Kevin?
I think, I'm definitely not, alone in this, but there was the first speak of the day, I think was maybe the best. It was like an economist, and it was just such a higher level of a talk than I've ever seen, as far as like giving you actual tactical advice on how to look at the economy as a whole and make better decisions on your business. So he kept talking about like lead indicators, looking at different data that's publicly available on like the general economy that People are spending a lot of money doing surveys to different groups and kind of just trying to look at that matched with your business to get a really good like health score on where you're at as far as like the trending overall economy and kind of where is it going. And, kind of look at like a 6-month and a 12-month lead indicator of, hey, everything's been going really good right now. However, if you look at some of these reports, it's not looking like it's going to be good anymore. So, I think in the past, we might look at it and go, hey, man, our business has been really good over the last 12 to 18 months. This train's just going to keep going. Let's invest into new people or a new machine or things like that, where he was kind of giving an analogy. And he was like, you might be at like the top, of a trend, and that might be very well going, that trend might be going downward over the next 6 to 12 months. So, which I could absolutely see has happened with us in the past, where we do that, then we slow down, things change, and now we're kind of stuck with like this overhead, whether it be a person that we have to let go, which stinks, or we're stuck with like a fixed expense. We might have bought a lease, or hey, we might have paid cash for it, but now we're out of that cash, So
it was applicable from that perspective? Like either maybe Steven, of your business, were there actual things that you could say, oh shoot, I need to be tracking this or looking at this?
Yeah. So he was talking about the correction of the COVID correction. Mm-hmm. So he's saying like with crazy demand curve going up, he would just use these like terms, and I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. But he basically, he was talking about how, economists aren't as worried about the economy as CEOs. So he said those were like polar opposites. He said like 85% of CEOs are like terrified of the economy, where the economists today aren't terrified about that. So he said he was really talking about a lot of biases that we have, whether they're like coming from the media or coming from elections. But he was talking about the correction that we're seeing from COVID, or the correction that we saw with the crazy demand, logistics, freight costs, and then now an increase in too much supply, and then like the inflation because of it. But he was saying like we're actually leveled out exactly how it should have leveled out, and like not to be terribly worried. I think one of the coolest things that he did though, Bruce, and I sent you a picture of this, he took your Printavo open data and he actually took like leading indicators from the economy and put his graphs over yours, and they almost matched exactly, which was cool.
It was really cool.
And so what he was basically saying, he's like, based on this Printavo data, if you actually use this as a source of information, it'll kind of tell you the trends of the industry, which I thought were really cool. Don't let that get to your head, but I thought that was super, super neat. He was talking a lot about how through, the boom and bust cycles, we won't experience like what happened in 2008. But what we'll experience is, a lot of people investing during COVID, and then, not necessarily defaulting on that equipment, but there's going to be like the debt ratios might be going up a little bit based on like debt owed to, equipment and things like that. I don't know, Kevin, did I say that right? I'm not an economist.
For sure. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, he had a really interesting like graph where it was essentially like asking like 4 different groups of people what they think about like a 2024 recession, and this was in 2023, and it was like the Federal Reserve like 0%. Like there are 0 people who said that they thought there was going to be a recession in 2024, and then it went up to like banks, and that was like, I don't know, 23%. And then went to like the general public, and that was closer to like 45%. But then it went to CEOs, and it was like 86% of CEOs who were interviewed thought that there would be a recession in 2024. So it was just really showing like, hey, there's a disconnect here, and there's a lot of information that I think we're believing, from like the media. There a lot of that type of stuff sells clicks and stories. So we're kind of getting fed a lot of that, and a lot of his undertone was like, hey, just kind of look at the data, like look at the data for yourself and match it up to your business. And so you can make the best decision for your business versus, just kind of believing a general rhetoric, because it pretty much, the way he had made it seem was like, hey, if you're serving consumers, it's looking pretty strong. It's looking like you have a really good runway, everything. But then on the other side, he was like, if you're an equipment manufacturer, you're in for tough times, like over the next like 1 to 2 years. So it made so much sense that there's just so many aspects of the economy and so many different sectors that, what might be
just
really
blanket it. You can't blanket it like you may read a headline. You have to really think about the effects of the different demand and supply like that. Because you're right, that's a good point. From a manufacturer is very different from a consumer to a small business. And even in a small business, what sector are you in as a small business? Who are you selling to? Those results may be wildly different.
Yeah, he had one slide at the end. He's like, okay, how do we synthesize this down? So one thing that he talked about was people leaving and coming to different states. So like moving out of Illinois or moving into Texas or moving into Las Vegas, right? And I was talking to Kevin and Ryan about it, and they're like, are you feeling that or seeing it? It's like, yeah, people are flooding to these different areas. So he was talking about like being smart about, where you are in regions and looking at like market share gains. And then he said, identify and remove unnecessary steps to increase efficiency and throughput, protect your margins by reducing waste and energy use, renegotiate transportation contracts, which is interesting. And then he said, focus on employee retention. That was like a big thing when we talked about the labor market, about keeping employees and retaining them. So super cool. I shot him a message. We'll have to get him on the podcast, but it was super insightful. All right. We also had, that was cool. In the middle of the day, there were like arts and crafts.
Yeah.
Kevin, what'd you do?
What'd you guys make?
So and I felt bad, but I was signed up for zip lining. But it was really, really cold, and I had kind of just full transparent, I kind of drank a little bit too much the night before. And so I was like, hey, I'm not doing too good. So I kind of sat that one out, and just kind of took it easy. Just kind of like, that was a really nice part about that resort, was there was just so many like easy places to just kind of like relax. So I was like, I'm just going to chill out because I want to be like fresh for Guy Raz. But yeah, what'd you end up doing, Steven?
I did silversmithing, so made some jewelry, which was cool. And then that was just like another cool time to like get away, meet some new people. I was making jewelry with Mike Namath from Ninja Transfers, Rush Order Tees.
Oh, cool.
And just learning about like his business. But we're just doing crafts together, which was cool. I don't know, it's different, right?
Yeah.
So that was super cool, and I hung out with like Mike Leone from M&R now, who came from Corneat, and Marcus Harvey from this company in Portland. That's this really cool brand in Portland. That's awesome. So it's like people that I normally would not have talked to at all, that you're kind of like forced to be in a room with a little bit and doing something fun and different. And I thought that was cool. And then obviously the afternoon, like the headliner was Guy Raz. Guy Raz is a prolific podcaster, runs this podcast called How I Built This, has interviewed, I think, 550 founders, some of the biggest names ever. And he was the headliner, which was pretty cool. Kevin, what did you think of Guy Raz?
Yeah, no, I thought, it seems like he's kind of, I'm not sure as far as his speaking, like how long he's been doing speaking. It seems like almost maybe like a newer thing for him, like to be doing these bigger speeches. But I thought it was really cool, like obviously just to see, like I was sitting next to you, but then I went out to the bathroom before he went on. And, you hear his voice, like he was talking with like Ryan or somebody like out there, and it's just like almost like a beacon. It's like, oh man, I like, it's such a unique voice, but just to see him live, I thought was really cool. And it was a very, like, I think it was a feel good speech, to like almost make you feel like, hey, you might be down right now, but guess what? The underlying tone of all of these founders that I speak to is their successes always came from a ton of failures, so right now it might be the down point, but there's always an opportunity to learn. And then ultimately there's a good chance that you could succeed. But
Bruce, what's your favorite Guy Raz episode? Did you still listen to it? How I Built This?
I feel like I used to have those queued up all the time, but I haven't more recently. I mean, obviously if you haven't seen that show, they deep dive into all kinds of companies. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, he's done some like Airbnb, like Kate Spade, like, Life is Good brand, Burton. There's an amazing one out there. Like, it's just bangers. What were you going to say, Bruce?
What do you feel like your takeaway was from Guy Raz?
So he, one thing that he said, his voice is very captivating. Like he's got this like mesmerizing voice. I think between him and Simon Sinek, they have the most like mesmerizing YouTube voices out there. But he's like, I'm a storyteller and I interview these companies. I'll sit with them for 4 or 5 hours to really like dig into them. And so he gave some different tips. He did do a deep dive into Liquid Death, which I think is super cool of a company. But one thing he said in a crowded and competitive category, brand almost always trumps functional differences. And I thought that was really, really interesting is like, Liquid Death, and you look at, it's in a saturated market and everyone thinks of water as this purifying great thing. And, their founder decided to go the complete opposite way and build a brand on pairing death with water. And I just thought of it. I'm like, how many shops in our industry really focus on brand? Like a brand agency and doing like market research and positioning and storytelling and aesthetic and and I was like, man, we're not doing enough to like make our brand really have a voice and a story and a message and things like that. So that was one of my biggest takeaways. I don't know, Kevin, what did you think?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask like your feedback on that because I agree. I do the same as like we spend a lot of time on like, the font choices we use for our logo or, and like we'll spend time on that. I was going to ask you, like, do you think that's super important? Like at what point in a business does brand really make a difference? Right. Because I think there's so many things that make sense leading up to that. Like, I think you have to have it in mind. And I think a lot of that comes from who you are as people inside the business.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a lot of the brand. But do you think that's something that somebody at like when you get to like 5 million, or do you think that's like something like even at $1 million of revenue, you should really be thinking about branding, or is that just a diversion from like actually doing the work to build the business?
Well, I think you look at like the B2B world versus the D2C world, right?
Right.
And so, if Liquid Death didn't have a crazy good brand story, they were doing it pre-revenue, I don't know if it would have caught on as much as it did. I don't know. I think about like some of these brands that I see that are like, they talked about Viore for a minute. Or you think about some of them and how they look and feel and the emotional ties they bring. I feel like we undermined it and should be investing in it earlier because I do think good brand tells a good story. I don't know. I'm torn by the same thing. I'm like, I don't know, Bruce, what about you? What do you think?
I think by a few million, it should be dialed and professional. I think, Kevin, the reason is I feel it adds an element of conversion around sales that's very hard to measure, but that extra 5%, maybe 10%, maybe compounds over a 5-year plus period. And so, when someone looks at something, it's like when you go to look at a restaurant, what is the feel of when I go browse Yelp, mainly rating. Okay. Go look at the pictures, is like, what does the inside look like, or things like that actually create a better environment. Then I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I mean, I think my wife and I would like to go to this place. I feel that makes perfect sense for a company of, either B2B or B2C, especially getting that size. And I say that size because that's probably when you could also afford to spend. I don't know, Steven, you're probably working in the agency. I can't remember what it was, but maybe 10,000 or 15,000 or 20,000 more. Okay. So maybe 20 or 30,000 on a really good, clean image. But I do feel that at that point, you also have a bit of product market fit. And so you're making things more efficient versus sort of creating the brand before there is a fit. But to your point, like Steven, you said, Liquid Death, they needed that day one. I listened to, there's a really good podcast called Founder Stories. And they had an episode about Red Bull and the founder of Red Bull. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I've never heard who is the founder of Red Bull? This Austrian guy. They've been working in the business for tens of years, but they are a marketing and sales company.
Right.
That is all that they do in-house is marketing and sales. They literally outsource everything else, bottling, manufacturing of juice or whatever, the liquid, the distribution, all that stuff is outsourced. The only thing that they have in-house is like the branding and marketing and sales part, because they're like, anyone can pick an energy drink. It's how do we stand out and how do we position ourselves in the market? Again, more of an extreme story, but touches on that piece a bit.
Well, that makes it. Well, I mean, that makes so much sense because there's so many people who associate Red Bull completely not with the drink, right? It might be the racing team or the off-road team or like the snowboard team, and it's like it's all based to sell more Red Bull. That when you like walk by it on the shelf, right? It's like, oh, cool. I associate with that F1 team. I'm gonna drink the same thing that they're drinking, But
I mean, Bruce, when you were growing Printavo, how important was aesthetic, look, feel, brand, story? Like, I mean, you were kind of the face of it, but it's something that we recognize now. How important was that to you when you were building?
For me, extremely important. My bias was, though, that I came from doing freelance design all the time. So I cared a lot about how things looked and felt when you went to it. Was it clean? Was it easy to understand? Was it easy to use? Those elements. And so I wanted to make sure that was a part of it from day one. And I think that's what, I emulated the Basecamp 37 Signals of the world because they were very easy and simple and kind of underdid the competition in a way around that. But I think to Steven's point, I do think it's underinvested in. Absolutely. And so we do it too late when we start thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes so much sense because there's probably a lot of correlation between like the water world and like what we're doing, like the decorated apparel world. There's a ton of there's a sea of competition, right?
But look, we have a real example. I mean, Steven, if you could share a little bit about, right, you're going through that process a bit with an agency. Talk about why now? Would you have done it earlier? Like all of that. We've never really talked about that.
I wish so we're rebranding. Like the NIL store now has a lot of legs. And we're going through a branding agency. We have a marketing agency that's working on the positioning of it, the way we talk, our taglines, how everything looks and feels. Because we think that, the legitimacy, like we scrap this together. Now we need to look really, really legit. Almost we need to catch up with the work that we're doing. Like we're way overdue. And that's really like we have a VP of marketing. Her name's Kelsey, and she's very conscious about it because she's worked with some really big CPG brands. And we've had some hard conversations of like, who is your customer? Is it the athlete? Is it the schools? Is it the fans? Is it the friends and family of the athletes? Right? Like, and then who's your primary audience? Who's your secondary audience? What are you storytelling? What are you trying to capture? Are you a marketplace that's selling to athletes to help them? And we had to have like really long, hard, tough conversations to understand that. And then once we did narrow that down with the agency, they're able to really give us like crystal clear scope of how we're going to market. And you see some of these best brands in the world, and it's because it's like super scientific. Like they are very, very thoughtful about it. So it has been an eye-opening experience for me. I always thought like, we could just build our logo ourselves and figure this out. Like, right. Nah.
Pick a font. Go to the
pick a font. Comic Sans. Okay. A couple other things that Guy said. I think we could talk about brand for a minute, but a couple other things that Guy said that I thought were really cool. He said, get your customers to be your sales force. And I took that down as something. Get your customers to be your sales force. I'm curious, Kevin, for you and Bruce, for you, when I say that, what is that? What feels come out?
That we're not doing it enough, or like we're not able to, or at least we're not tracking it, right? because I think we all, it really, that kind of boils down to a little bit like a word of mouth, right? Which I think a lot of shops thrive off of. It's, hey, I did a great thing for this company or this sports group or this like, PTA. Well, if you do a great job for them, that person knows people, right? And so if you are doing that, then the next time another person, the PTA was like, hey, those shirts were great. Where did we get those? Oh, we went to Campus Inc. You should reach out to them. And I think especially with you, Steven, you're in another world now with, all the schools, those people all talk to each other. And it's like, who's doing your NIL? It's like, oh, go talk to the NIL store, talk to Steven at Campus Inc. He's doing a great job. And it's like, I think for me, like we're really trying to work on like, how do you quantify that into a way, because it's almost like an invisible.
Can you quantify it?
What's that?
Can you quantify it?
I think just by asking, right? I think a lot of us do a bad job of like, how did you find us? And that's something that we're trying to put into like the onboarding process for a customer is, hey, how did you find us? And then also like looking at like those rewards, right? Like, hey, if you refer somebody to us, at the bottom of the new Merch Loop site, we have like refer a friend and get $50 if they make a store, so like those types of things that we could try to, instead of it being this invisible underhand of the business of like word of mouth, like, which is a little ambiguous.
Kevin, do you guys use a CRM? Like what CRM, if you would share? Are you guys on a specific one or?
Yeah, we use Salesforce.
You use Salesforce. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're really, and like, do you feel like you guys are maximizing it, like using it to its full potential?
No, I'd say it's like a little bit overkill, but for us, it's a little bit overkill now, but we're just building the bones so we don't have to change down the road. I think there's like cheaper options that we could have done, but data migration is like a nightmare. Like it's like the worst thing to do, especially if you are going from something that's making it hard for you to migrate the data,
Right. And Kevin has a co-founder, Shane, who's, I would call him like the technical co-founder, right? Like he still uses an Android phone, super nerdy. I gave him shit for like an entire dinner of like using an Android, but you have that person that can nerd out about the data and stuff to allow you to do this. I was even going to go to a step further when it said, get your customers to be your Salesforce. Isn't that what Merch Loop is? You're essentially activating customers to activate their networks.
We are. And that's a huge thing. Like we're getting probably maybe 1 to 2 referrals a week of people who are like, hey, my husband bought something from a store, from their company. And I like looked over and I'm the human resources lead at my company. We need a store too, so it's like, it's like, I'm almost trying to get it into people and like kind of focusing on certain markets to be like almost more like Calendly, right? Where it's like, it had that viral loop of, hey, if I get this into schools or if I get this into some things, well, that's getting spread out to all of these other people who own businesses or they're the heads in HR, the people who are heading up swag. So they interact with it and have a great experience that then they say, hey, I need this for myself as well. So we're trying to do it more in that sense of like, get it into people, into these organizations that will have a widespread network that are going to use it and have a great experience. But so in your sense, yeah, I think that's a totally great way to think about it as far as like they are our customers.
I think when you build an online store, so Merch Loop is a Shopify app, essentially, I could set it up actually and connect products that Kevin makes available. I could build an e-commerce site if I was a Merch Loop user, and then you guys would drop ship and fulfill everything, right? When you build an online store, you're essentially taking, whoever that group organizer is, whether it's the HR person or whoever that is, and just giving them all these tools to like sell to their entire network. And that's like an exponential way to acquire new customers, just naturally. It just like happens. Yeah. And I don't even know if it's trackable. Bruce, yeah. Kevin, what were you gonna say?
No, I think it's definitely hard, right? But yeah, I guess Bruce, I mean, like, did you guys see that with Printavo, and like, was there a good way to track that? Like, where did a user come from?
Did you have any of your best customers turn into your Salesforce? I can't think of any.
Well, obviously, Steven's been a rock star player.
I must have missed
Yeah,
I must have missed the Christmas party.
We tried to foster it a little bit with like an actual referral program, like where we sent out Amazon gift cards. So you get, I think it's a $200 gift card for anyone that you refer and that subscribes. That was the most measurable, we'll call it. But yeah, it's still a crapshoot as far as like measuring the aspect. I think the bigger effect is very similar to brand in that it's not as measurable, but it can have a large effect that's there and compounding as well. So it's like if you treat them super well and they have a great experience and it comes up, then they send someone in, and that could be 5-10%, but that adds up every single year. Like Steven, did that when you heard that part, did that make you think you needed to change anything, or no? It was just an emphasis of yes, I believe that.
I 100% believe that. I sent it to a couple of people on my team, and I was like, that is what we do. We take our customers and turn them into clients into partners, and let them kind of spread the word of Campus Ink in the NIL store. So we do that with our students. We do that with our athletes. And it was just reaffirming that, okay, this is like a way to continue to market. So I don't know. It hit home for me a little bit. Cool. I got a couple more.
All right, zip them.
Couple more. Okay. It said, be prepared to trash all your assumptions and take a new approach.
Bezos.
Very Bezos. This was actually on the story of Viore, which is like a really, really interesting clothing brand. Bruce is a big fan. I think maybe Bruce wears it almost more than Lulu, I want to say. No?
50-50.
50-50. But Viore started in San Diego, and the premise, actually, we went to one of their stores like several years ago, Bruce, if you remember, when we were in Encinitas. But they were supposed to be shorts for guys that do yoga. And that was like the vertical. And they tried and grinded and tried super, super hard until they realized that like it wasn't working. And I think it was like 3 or 4 years, running out of money. And then it was like shorts for guys in all action sports, biking, jogging, running, swimming, surfing, whatever it was. And they just repositioned themselves after like 4 years of trying this out. And then they exploded. I think Viore is valued at several $1 billion right now, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think, I don't know. I just leave it at that. What are your thoughts?
That's exactly what Bezos said in the interview with Lex Friedman. That he's always questioning the status quo. He's always asking. There's a good story of him in a meeting talking about their customer service and how fast people pick up the phone and are able to resolve a problem. And they're like, yeah, we've got it under 10 minutes. Things are going good. And most executives would probably say, okay, sounds good. Next topic. He calls the customer support line right then in the call. And it takes way longer than what they said for someone to pick up. And so everyone just like looking around the room. And, that challenges the status quo. And he still emphasizes that it's important to do that even at their size that they are at, however large it is now.
Kevin, I'm curious at Stoked. Trash all your assumptions and take a new approach. What have you guys done in the last year?
Oh my goodness. That's like our credo of the last 4 years. It was like, because we got into print on demand thinking one thing, and it's just like, it constantly evolves, right? Like, we thought we were to come in and we were going to make a print on demand app that was going to compete with Printful and Printify. And we're like, cool. It's just, it's a small enough thing now, but then we just got, we just don't have that background, like as far as like they were able to out compete us like by a ton. And then we're like, okay, cool. Like we're building all like Inksoft stores, all these things. So we're going to build a print on demand store platform, right? Where you could build your own print on demand store. And we did, like we built that. And then it was like, okay, this isn't like, we're now having to train people how to use this. Like, and I was about like maybe mid of last year or like first quarter of last year. I was like, hey, listen, instead of like telling people to build their own stores, we'll build them for them, and it was just an immediate like, okay, change. Like it was immediate product market fit. Like we finally hit it with like the print on demand, and we sunk a lot of money into building that store platform. And we just turned it off a couple months ago. Like it's no longer like we're no longer servicing that because it's just it's not right. Like I think a lot of the things is just like people getting caught up into like sunk costs and like, oh, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, but it's like, dude, if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. And there's a lot of things.
How did that feel?
For Shane, a lot harder than me. For me, it's like it's just I can get over things a little bit faster just because I can see the upside of moving on. But I think it is tough to stomach and say, man, I wish we didn't do that. But that's a trap mindset because you'll never get to where you're going without trying those different things. We wouldn't be where we're at with Merch Loop if we hadn't tried all of those other things, because every single one led to another. And it's just like the cost of learning, and I'm okay with it. But at the same time, like I now know there's a lot of things that need to happen before we make a decision so that we don't continue just making stupid decisions and hoping that we learn something from it. Right. And a lot of that is just customer feedback, right? We're instead of us trying to assume what a customer wants, we're asking them, and that's where a lot of the transition to Merch Loop. But I think it's a great mindset to have, is to just move on. Like, don't get stuck and just like burn that ship and move on,
I think what you're alluding to, Kevin, is the bigger you get, the harder the pivot and the more costly it can be.
Yes.
Right. And so like, I think of 3 or 4 years ago, I was trying different warehouse management systems. So it's like, all right, let's sign up for that one. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, let's try this. And now, with our team, we're trying to figure out what we're going to install or build. Basically, it's like, are we going to build or buy? And we're all just like, we're going on these demos and we're like, nope, that's not going to work. Nope, and we're so much pickier because we know that it could be literally like hundreds and thousands of dollars of a mistake if we turn the ship this way and keep going. I think when you're small and you're dynamic, you can like quickly iterate. But you guys you got rid of all your DTGs and went to DTF.
We did.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we had, 9 Brother GTXs with the Firefly system and, doing that. And we were just like, I think it was about April of last year. We were like, dude, this isn't, like this, like we've sunk a lot of money into that. We barely made it back. And it was just one of those things where it's like, this isn't working. We got to find a new way. And we weren't afraid. We got an opportunity to sell a lot of it, got more of that money back, and we just immediately just invested in it all into DTF, as well as like outsourcing solutions as well. But yeah, I mean, I think you can't not get stuck with like, okay, I got to make this work. Because at a certain point, you're just freaking pushing the boulder up the hill instead of having momentum take you on the other side.
Will you stand behind a DTF machine on this podcast, or would you prefer not to say?
No, I think it's one of those things. It's just like we're so new. And honestly, if a newer solution comes out tomorrow, I'm gonna try it, and if it's better, then I'll go with that. It's just right now it's a pain in the ass. Yeah, I won't necessarily stand behind it. I'll stand behind the idea, right? The concept is correct, but the execution of the machines right now is not. Like, that is not.
And
correct.
How many machines did you guys get?
We just got one, but we got a really big one, which I don't know if that was like the best idea. I feel like maybe we should have done like smaller ones, but no, I like it. I like the quality, but yeah, dude, like, I mean, I think I was joking with you last week. It was like, dude, it was down for 4 days. And it's just like, that's so hard to deal with if you don't have your only machine down for 4 days. So.
Okay, we need a sign. We were riding the shuttle back to the airport. And we're like, we need a sign that says like, it's been this many days since my DTF broke.
We should sell those.
It's a good t-shirt.
Dude, that would be hilarious. Like, my DTF has been running for this many days in a row.
Right.
Shoot. That would be freaking hilarious. But yeah, like new and emerging technologies, like we're not afraid to jump on them. And then we're not afraid to trash them and try something else. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's something I learned kind of from you. Like, I think you do a great job of like trying new stuff all the time,
Hurricane Steven.
Should we get a couple? I got a couple more. What do you guys think?
Yeah, shoot through 'em.
Okay, let me see if there's any good ones. So be prepared to trash all your stuff. One thing he talked about was rejection. And he said, think of no as the beginning, not the end. And he talked a lot about how the large majority of founders have created a thick skin to rejection, and they just know it's part of the game. And it's like this scar tissue that they just have to endure. Which I thought was really interesting, is that he said, think of no as the beginning, not the end. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. What do you guys think?
Damn, that's powerful. I'm writing it down.
I think it's great. I mean, as far as I think it's a difference between like maybe people who come from the operation side versus sales side. Like in sales, you get rejected all the time, right? Like that is a numbers game. But for me, it's like, I guess in your guys' opinion, there's certain opportunities where you have to go after it and you have to keep going. But what I've kind of found is that there are so many customers out there that a lot of the times it's like when a customer tells me no, I'm like, okay, cool. I can kind of move on at this point, and I'm going to make this a really like positive experience. Like I'm not going to keep badgering you unless again, there's certain strategic opportunities where I'm like, okay, I gotta do business with these people. But I would say the vast majority of me, it's like, if I hear no, I'm like, okay, cool. I can now cross that off the list. Like I'm no longer going to pursue that as much, and just keep moving on, you know?
So Kevin, you will move on, or will you re-pursue? Like, will you go back to them over and over again?
It depends. But for me, I think it's just so much more like, I think you lose so much more momentum trying to find the right people because it's so much like sales is so much having the right solution for the right person at the right time. And so my whole goal is just to be like a very positive sale, like outreach, like cycle. And so if somebody's like, hey, like I'm good, please take me off the list. I'm like, hey, no problem. I've taken you off the list. Just please keep us in mind if anything moves forward. And I just don't reach out to them again, you know, because if I were to try to convince every single person I'm trying to sell, I might only get through like 100 people a month. And none of those people might be, versus if I just keep going and trying to find more and more and more people, I might be able to get to like, 10,000 people in a month. And there's a very good chance I could find 100 people within that 10,000 that are going to say yes to me.
Steven, you're very persistent. I've seen it at the trade shows.
What are you talking about?
Well, I think it's a little bit different.
No for an answer type.
If I believe in what I'm selling, I don't take no for an answer, and I am very persistent. And but I know that it might take the sell cycle and time frame, like what kind of Kevin said, is going to be different for everyone. And so, for us, we're approaching these schools to change the way they do all of their licensing, give us their rights, allow us to build stuff for their players, come in and do something that's never been done. We get told no all the time, and I just notate it. And then I come back from a different angle and a different angle and a different angle. And so many times in business, I love when my team gives me the objection before they even source the objection themselves. Like, they'll be like, no, they're never going to want that. They told us this, and this. And I go, have you asked them yet? Have you actually had them say no to you? Like, show me the objection. Show it to me, And they're like, well, I'll reach out. And I'm like, yeah, until they actually give you, a true objection, it's something that can be worked around, right? There's a difference between conditions and objections. I'll have to find the quote here. But I thought what was really interesting was he's like, if you're a founder, you're just wired for rejection. It's just it's just part of the game you play. And when you start getting a no, that's one step closer to getting a yes, which I thought was really, really interesting, especially if you're teaching young salespeople. Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. It sounds like Kevin's like, all right, there's another customer out there, and you're like, we're going to turn this no into a yes. I'm like, it depends. Like, no, but why? And then, okay, cool. Right. Let's keep in touch. So,
well, I guess you also have to think about your TAM, right? The total addressable market. It's like, how many schools can you address, Steven? Like,
Yeah, there's a set amount.
Finite.
There's finite, whereas like I'm going after companies that have 250 employees to 2,500 employees, and there's like hundreds of thousands of them, so it's more so just like which pond are you fishing in? And like, because with Steven's point, like you can't take no for an answer because you have to capture that market share, right?
To close that loop, a condition is not an excuse or a stall. It's a valid reason that the prospect can't agree to what you're proposing, right? Like, I'm broke. Okay. But an objection usually sounds like I need to consult with someone. I'm not sure if this is the right fit. I'm happy with my current supplier. I want to think over it. We might not need that right now. So I don't know. There's my Sales Inc. Set sales tip of conditions versus objections.
That's really interesting.
Okay. One thing that I thought he highlighted was Giannis from the Bucks. There was a press conference that Giannis did. Giannis, did I pronounce his name? I always say Giannis.
I'm not sure.
He's got an amazing documentary, but he said they asked him about if a season was, a game was a failure, and he said there are some good days and bad days. Some days you're successful, some days you're not, but that doesn't mean it's a failure. These are all just steps for success, and so he talks about rejection as stepping stones to success, which I thought was pretty neat. And cool. Anything else that stuck out to y'all, Kevin?
I know. I'd say the event as a whole, it was definitely it was really interesting. It was a lot of interesting conversations. It seems to me like there's a lot of appetite out there for companies to like merge or acquire new companies. I feel like I had a lot of conversations around that. Which, makes sense. I mean, we were seeing that in the promo space a ton, but I don't think we've seen it too much here in like the screen print, like the decorated apparel world. But it seems pretty like we might see that kind of like kick up over the next like 12 or 24 months, right?
As far as shops like ourselves merging or getting acquired or next level thinking.
Yeah.
I see it happen. I think it's going to start to happen. Bruce, what do you think of that?
Sounds like some some private talks happening there. I mean, I've heard things from some of the people that I know that went to the event. I do know that they're always looking to buy shops or have shop theirs around, and for a variety of different reasons. I mean, a lot of them just are looking for more growth, and the way they view more growth, especially at a certain size, is by buying up another shop and converting a majority of the sales over and expanding the footprint. But that sounds awesome. ThreadX. Yeah. I don't know. Is there an email list or where people can follow along to know when the next one is? Or I guess this one was an invite only anyway. It wasn't like you could.
I think probably like following Made Lab. Yeah, I think that would definitely be the people to start searching. And again, props to those guys. I mean, that was, I can't imagine how much work that was to put that on, and to even think of it in the first place, and then to execute on it. I think it just goes to show like it's pretty awesome to have those guys in the industry to kind of think of that type of experience for the rest of us.
Yeah. And I don't think it's by doing something like that, invite only, it's supposed to be necessarily like, okay, you can come, you can't come. I think the point is to create something a little bit more elevated and a little bit different and a little more curated, which I think goes the distance over time. I appreciate all the free salsa and beer and wine that was in our rooms.
Yeah. All right, Kevin, thanks for joining on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, Printhouse, we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully that was informative. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications if you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy all the stuff we're putting out, it's really helpful. We love to just be able to see it. That means that we're doing a good job. To subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and hit the like button. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.